Welcome back to MHS Midnight Horror Stories. I know that many of you come to these videos as a gentle way to unwind before drifting off to sleep. So, before you close your eyes tonight, could I ask you for one small favor? Just leave me a quick interaction, a comment, a like, or maybe share where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Little actions like that help YouTube recognize the content and spread it to more people who might enjoy it. My current goal is to reach around 300 likes within the first 24 hours. Now then, let's step into tonight's chilling stories together. 2 years ago, I had a part-time job at Spirit Halloween. It was great because I got a discount on everything. Those things can be pretty expensive if you love Halloween as much as I do. Unfortunately, our store was severely understaffed. This meant I had to work on Halloween night. Instead of enjoying my favorite holiday, I had to stand behind the counter. However, I had bills to pay, so I tried to get through the shift without being annoyed. We were busy all day. People were coming in to buy last-minute costumes. I was constantly scanning barcodes and bagging items for customers one after another. About an hour before closing, the store started to empty out. 2 guys came in. I saw them walk straight to the mask section in the back. To me, they looked very suspicious. When they walked in, they were staring everywhere and keeping their heads down. Sometimes, we had to deal with theft at Spirit Halloween. I hoped these 2 guys wouldn't steal anything. After about 10 minutes, I saw them both walk out of the section and line up to pay. I silently cursed myself for thinking they would steal. When it was their turn, they bought 2 masks. One was a scary, scarred-faced Freddy Krueger mask. The other was a Jason Voorhees mask. They put cash on the counter and didn't say a word. I scanned the barcodes, took the money, and put the masks in a bag. They took the bag and left the store. Less than 5 minutes after they left, I realized my cell phone wasn't where it was supposed to be. I always kept it right next to the cash register, where I could easily check my messages when there were no customers. I started searching everywhere. I checked under the counter, in the drawers, and even in the trash can. I asked my coworkers if they had seen anything. No one knew where my phone was. I was already miserable working on Halloween night. Now I had lost my phone. It was a really bad day. We cleaned up and closed as usual. I locked up the store and went out to the parking lot. I drove home in a bad mood. Losing my phone was really bothering me. I got home around 10:30 that night. Luckily, there were still kids trick-or-treating in my neighborhood. Some parents were still taking their kids out, even though it was pretty late. I sat on my porch with a big bowl of candy. Kids ran up in all kinds of costumes. There were princesses, superheroes, and little monsters. I handed out candy to them. After about half an hour, things completely died down. I went inside to rest. I put on a movie, grabbed a pumpkin beer, and sat down on the sofa. I could finally relax and enjoy Halloween in my own way. I was really enjoying the movie when there was a knock on the door. It was almost midnight, too late for trick-or-treaters. Maybe it was some late kid. I paused the movie and stood up. I grabbed some leftover candy and went to the front door. I turned on the porch light and opened the door. No one was there. I stepped outside and looked around. The neighborhood was completely quiet. I was about to go back inside when I saw something on the doorstep. 2 masks were placed neatly right in front of my door. One was the Freddy Krueger mask. The other was the Jason Voorhees mask. I bent down and picked up the Jason Voorhees mask. It was heavier than I thought. There was something inside. I turned the mask over and couldn't believe my eyes. It was my cell phone, the phone I'd been searching for all over the store. I looked around my neighborhood again, but I didn't see a single person. My phone was locked with a passcode, but when I pressed the power button to turn on the screen, I saw that my wallpaper had been changed. It was no longer a picture of my family. Instead, it was a picture of me. In the photo, I was leaving Spirit Halloween and walking to my car in the parking lot. The photo was taken from a distance, probably from another car or from some corner of the parking lot. I checked my entire phone with shaking hands. Luckily, nothing else had been changed. I tried to understand what was happening. Those two guys clearly had a plan. They had stolen my phone when they bought the masks and followed me home. I quickly grabbed the two masks and threw them in the trash can. I didn't want them anywhere near my house for another second. I went inside and carefully locked the door. I checked all the windows, making sure they were all locked tight. I went back to the living room and tried to watch the movie again, but I couldn't focus anymore. I didn't get a wink of sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Every time there was a sound outside, I sat up and looked out the window. I was afraid they would come back. 2 years have passed, and I still can't explain what happened. I've never seen those two people again. My life is fine. But every time Halloween season comes around, when I see those masks in stores or hear a knock on my door late at night, I remember what happened that day. I've always lived by the motto, just do it and see what happens. I know it's not the wisest advice in the world, but it has helped me a lot in life, and certainly in the story I went through. A few years ago, on Halloween night, one of my best friends hosted a Halloween party at his house. His parents were gone for the weekend, so we had the whole house to ourselves. A costume was required to get into the party, and I was dressed as Michael Myers. At the time, I was 18 and a senior in high school. The party was a lot of fun with more than 40 people, music, drinks, and crazy costumes. It was a pretty typical Halloween party, but everything changed when Lucas suggested playing with a Ouija board. He asked me and a few other people if we wanted to go down to the basement to use it. At the time, I had only had one beer, but instinctively, my answer was no. I don't mess with anything spiritual. I truly believe you shouldn't play around with spirits and things like that, especially on Halloween night. After being called a coward a few times for not wanting to join, I told them to just do it and see why they shouldn't play with a Ouija board. They laughed at me as I watched Lucas and a few other people go down to the basement to play. I didn't care what they said. I was going to do what I felt most comfortable with. The basement was always colder than the rest of the house. The ceiling was low, the lights flickered, and a musty smell filled the air. Honestly, the Halloween vibe was spooky enough. I felt like I should stop there. The party continued upstairs, and I ignored what had just happened. Around midnight, I left completely sober. I drove home without checking to see how Lucas or the others were doing after they went to the basement. When I got home and got into bed, my phone lit up. I got a text from the party host asking if I was okay and saying that the people who played with the Ouija board had just been in a car accident. I had to reread the text a few times. I immediately thought about what I had said to them before they went down to the basement. I immediately called Lucas. It rang once, twice, 3 times. He picked up. Lucas was out of breath on the phone. He said he was driving home when he felt like someone, he swore, like an invisible hand from the back seat, yanked the steering wheel to the left. The car lost control and crashed into a ditch. Lucas said that he was fine, and so were the others with him. I breathed a sigh of relief, but I was still worried. The next day, I went to the hospital to visit Lucas and the others. All night long, they heard tapping on their windows, even though they were on the 2nd floor. Lucas said he had the same recurring dream of a dark figure standing in the basement, staring up at the ceiling. To this day, Lucas and I are still friends, but he never talks about it. No more Ouija jokes, no more Halloween parties. I still live by my old motto, just do it and see what happens. But if you ask me about Ouija boards, I will tell you not to do it, never try it, especially on Halloween night. Some childhood memories are ones you want to forget, but you can't. For me, that memory is Halloween night when I was 11 years old. On that Halloween night, my best friend Lily and I were trick-or-treating together. We were neighbors and did almost everything together, including dressing up in identical skeleton costumes for Halloween. Our parents gave us a simple rule. We couldn't leave our neighborhood and we had to be home before 8 p.m. Knowing we had a time limit, we tried to visit as many houses as possible. Both of our candy bags became significantly heavier, and we were so proud of the amount of candy we had collected. Overjoyed with our success, I was walking and counting my candy. Suddenly, I was pushed onto the cement sidewalk. I remember that my knee even started to bleed. I was in so much pain that I was about to cry. I looked around and saw a person in a gorilla costume zoom past me. They were running at full speed down the street. Lily yelled that he was a jerk and tried to help me get up. I told her I was fine, just a little shocked. We watched the man in the gorilla suit fly down the street, running as if he was trying to escape from something. We picked up our dropped candy and were talking about how much of a jerk that guy was when we heard sirens in the distance. At the time, we didn't connect the two things, but it wasn't long before everything became clear. About 5 minutes later, my mom called. She was panicked and told us to come home immediately and not to ask any questions. When we got home, with our Halloween candy bags still full, but now we had lost interest, my mother led us into the living room. Her face was tense and worried. The television was on and tuned to the news. The news anchor was explaining that a young man who had attended a Halloween party was now the prime suspect in a murder case. He had entered the house where the Halloween party was taking place and found his girlfriend cheating on him. The young man had lost his temper and committed a knife attack. He had murdered 3 people: his girlfriend, the man she was cheating on, and the homeowner. When the anchor said he showed up to the party in a gorilla costume, my mind was dazed for a few seconds. He was now on the run and was very dangerous. That's when everything connected. The man in the gorilla suit who pushed me and the sirens in the distance were linked. I looked at Lily. Her face was pale, her eyes were wide, and her hands were shaking as she took mine. We both understood what had just happened. I remembered the feeling of being pushed by him, the musty smell of sweat from the gorilla suit, and the brief glance of madness I saw through the mask's eye holes. I now understood why he was running like that. I didn't tell my mom. She was worried enough. If she knew that her daughter had encountered a murderer, she would have been even more of a wreck than I was. We just sat in silence, holding hands as a way to comfort each other. This is something we have kept a secret to ourselves until now. Anyway, they caught the guy, and he's serving a life sentence. Many years have passed, but I still can't forget that moment. A simple push became a Halloween nightmare when I was 11, but what helped me get through it wasn't just time, it was Lily's hand holding mine. That memory reminds me that even in the scariest moments, true friendship can be the light that helps you stand strong.
I'm Oscar, 30 years old. I lived with my paternal grandmother since I was 5. In my small memory from that time, I don't remember everything exactly. I remember that I used to live in a different house with my parents. The memory is fragmented. Afterwards, I was moved to live with my grandmother. The reason for moving houses was later explained to me by my grandmother. Because my parents had jobs far away, and it wasn't convenient to take me along. Life with Grandma was also very happy. To her, I was everything. At first, I would often cry at night because I missed my mom. Every time I received a call from my parents, I would also cry. By the time I was about 6 or 7 years old, when I began to understand things a bit more, I asked my grandmother many questions about everything around me. The familiar spot at the dining table was that I sat on the left side while my grandmother sat in the middle. Suddenly, I felt that something was missing. The scene before me was very familiar. It was the spot where I was sitting and the same dishes on the table. But there was something missing. "Grandma, where's Alvin?" That name suddenly popped into my mind, like a spring being released after being tightly compressed. My grandmother was stunned for a few seconds and said, "Do you mean Buddy? Isn't he over there enjoying a snack?" "No, I mean Alvin. I remember there was someone who used to sit and eat with us." "There's no one, dear. Hurry and eat before the food gets cold." Grandmother's face became serious as she continued eating. I didn't know how to explain that hazy memory to her. As time went on, I began to remember more images and fragmented memories of Alvin. In every corner of the house, in every nook and cranny. To be honest, I can't remember his face, and I'm not sure if Alvin actually existed. Whenever I remembered something, I would always ask my grandmother, "I'm fed up with that name Alvin already, Oscar. It might just be your imaginary friend." But I didn't think so. The feeling about Alvin was very real. He was completely different from my imaginary friends. Whenever my parents came to visit, I was very happy because there would be lots of toys and sweets. "Mom, do you know Alvin?" Hearing my question, my mother was stunned and stared at me. You remember Alvin?" I nodded innocently, continuing to chew on candy while telling my mother about it. "Not much. I just remember his name and that he seemed to have been here before." My mother quickly placed her hand on my shoulder and turned me to face her. "Do you remember where Alvin went?" "No. Do you know Alvin?" "Don't eat too many candies, Oscar. They're not good for your teeth and digestion." Grandmother appeared and interrupted my conversation with my mother. I ran over to show grandmother the items my mother had brought for me. "Candies again?" Grandmother looked at my mother with a somewhat irritated tone. My mother pulled me away, saying she would take me to the playground while my father stayed behind to talk with my grandmother. I was very happy on the days when my parents came to visit. Many times I asked my parents to either take me and grandmother with them or to stay here with us. My mother agreed but asked me to wait a little longer. My parents left again, and I cried for a few days afterward because I missed them. But with grandmother by my side, things were okay again. One time I brought a school friend home to play after school. I proudly showed him grandmother's baked cheesecake. Grandmother smiled and told us to play only in the indoor area in the backyard, and not to go outside or open the gate for strangers. We obediently followed her instructions, playing together in the backyard while we waited for grandmother to bake the cake. Bubby played with us. When the ball rolled to the end of the yard, I ordered Bubby to go get it, but he didn't come back. Instead of paying attention to the ball, he kept sniffing something under the apple tree. I guess that Bubby must have found a fallen apple or something. My friend and I ran over to call Bubby. Bubby suddenly started barking loudly and digging non-stop under the apple tree. I yelled at Bubby to stop, saying that this was the apple tree grandmother loved and that we'd be in big trouble if we messed with it. I quickly picked up Buddy, but he continued to bark persistently at the apple tree. "What's going on?" Grandmother's voice startled us. Normally she was very gentle, but even just frowning was enough to make me scared. Bubby was locked in the kennel, and my classmate and I ate the cheesecake with a sense of unease. "What did you see?" Grandmother asked us with a frown. "No, we just saw Bubby digging in the dirt." I quickly spoke up to explain for my friend. After that day, my friend stopped coming over to my house. Grandmother built a very tall fence around the apple tree herself without calling a contractor. Bubby was sent to a relative's house while I was at school. I cried and begged grandmother to bring Bubby back, but her answer was no. One time I saw a car and several police officers at the neighbor's house. I quickly ran back to ask grandmother and found out that the neighbor's family had reported their youngest son missing. It seemed like I had seen this scene somewhere before. The police car, the sounds of crying, and the missing person information. All of it felt eerily familiar and vividly real. Had the police ever come to our house, Grandma? I remember it seems like... Stop saying meaningless things, Oscar. Come inside right away. Grandmother interrupted me and completely changed her demeanor. After that, I didn't question anything with grandmother anymore. I was afraid of seeing her displeased. When I finished elementary school, my mother came to pick me up and we left. I missed grandmother a lot and felt sorry that she had to live alone. When I was nearing the end of middle school, grandmother passed away from a stroke that wasn't treated in time. My family hurried back that night to prepare for her funeral. Looking back at the house with so many pictures and memories of Grandma woven into every corner, I can't stop crying. The apple tree in the backyard is heavy with ripe red fruit, falling all over the ground because no one is there to pick them. The fence Grandma built with her own hands has almost completely fallen down. Under the apple tree, a skull with half exposed, half buried in the ground. I looked carefully, and once I was certain of what I had seen, I rushed into the house to call my parents. Dad immediately ran to the backyard, while Mom collapsed right where she stood, gasping for breath. "Alvin! Alvin!" Mom kept murmuring that name in shock, ignoring all the questions I asked. Suddenly, Mom sprang up, dashed toward the garden, and screamed the name Alvin out loud. Kneeling under the apple tree, Mom kept sobbing and frantically digging up the earth. Dad tried to stop Mom, but he was met with a series of painful blows from her. Dad told me to go inside and call the police with the ambulance. The scene repeated once again. The police car arrived at my house, and the crying. Yes, it was definitely Mom's crying. My mom was given a sedative by the medical staff and fell asleep, leaving only Dad to deal with the police. Under the apple tree, the police uncovered the remains of a 6-year-old boy and confirmed it was Alvin, my half-brother. That's why I always have fragments of memories of playing with him. Alvin went missing when I was a little over 4. The police also came to my house to investigate. Mom's desperate crying filled the air, and I stood in the room terrified, watching from the inside. Not being able to find him caused my mom to suffer from a severe mental crisis. Dad took me to live with Grandma, so Mom could have time to receive treatment. So Alvin had been lying there alone for 12 years, witnessing me playing and growing up every day. Grandma is no longer here, and everyone knows this is connected to her. But the reason remains unknown to everyone.
I'm Oscar, 26 years old, living alone in New York. Because I have an online job and have free time, I often sleep during the day and then work at night. In recent months, a 7-Eleven convenience store opened near my house. I really enjoy being able to buy food at night while working. A man named David, 45 years old, is the owner of the store. David is recruiting staff and temporarily looks after this place. David designed a room at the back of the store to provide a comfortable place to rest. He was funny and kind. Sometime later, the store had another female employee. Her appearance is not very outstanding, but her way of talking attracted me. Her name is Mary, 26 years old, and she is Mr. David's niece. Gradually, I stopped by the convenience store several times a day to talk to Mary. I started to see that Mary had feelings for me. But David gradually became more grumpy every time he saw me. I guess David is upset because I'm affecting Mary's work. He met me privately and harshly asked me to stay away from Mary. David gave the reason that he did not want Mary to be in danger when getting acquainted with strangers. It's ironic that Mary is old enough to make her own decisions about her life. Of course, I didn't listen to David. Since that tense conversation, David continuously appeared at the store. It's like he's guarding Mary and I so we don't have a chance to come into contact. Many times I asked Mary out to have her own space. She happily accepted, but then always had a reason to refuse. One day I stayed up late to meet a deadline and felt hungry. I went to the convenience store. There was no one inside. I called out to David and he didn't answer. I walked around and then accidentally stopped at the door leading to the room at the back of the store. Just as I was about to approach the door, it suddenly opened loudly. Mary walked out looking haggard, her clothes disheveled. She smiled very awkwardly at me, raised her hand to close the door, not giving me a chance to look inside. I was extremely surprised to see Mary. This was not her shift. Looking at Mary's body, I still saw bruises. I asked worriedly, but she avoided my eyes and said she was fine. That night, I no longer had enough concentration and spirit to work. I always think about Mary and many questions pop up in my head. The following days, I did not see David appear again. Mary said that David had an accident and broke his leg, so he would stay home and rest for a while. Supervising and operating that store will be in charge of Mary. She will stay at the store and use David's room. Mr. David also recruited an additional employee, a middle-aged woman named Joan. Mary and I became a couple not long after. Unlike other couples, our date spot is always a convenience store. Mary never let me or Miss Joan into the back room of the store. One time, I used the restroom at the store. After draining the water, I saw something floating back. It looked like meat and had a very unpleasant smell. I guess the pipe was clogged. This must be leftover food someone had flushed down. This condition lasted for several weeks afterward. Not only the toilet, the store's drain was also clogged. I wanted to handle this for Mary, but she said she would do it herself. It's been a while since David returned to the store. Mary also did not care much for her uncle. The next strange thing is that Miss Joan also disappeared after nearly a month of working here. That day, Mary and I were at the store when the police came to investigate Miss Joan's disappearance. Mary happily cooperated and said she had resigned from the store a week before the missing information was reported. One time I went to the store looking for Mary but couldn't find her. I couldn't hold back my curiosity anymore, so I decided to enter the room at the back of the store to find her. The space inside is very stuffy and dark. I smelled clearly the smell of disinfectant and cleaning fluid. There was something in the corner of the room. I approached it and saw it was a chainsaw. Do convenience stores also use this?
What are you doing here?
Mary shouted loudly, startling me. She stood in the doorway, staring at me and full of anger. Before I could react, Mary immediately kicked me out and slammed the door. I returned home with all kinds of surprised and helpless emotions inside me. The next day, the convenience store closed. I also completely lost contact with Mary. About a week passed. I was worried and couldn't do anything. I decided to report to the police and then received a call from the police. They asked me to come to the station to cooperate in the investigation of the murder of 2 people. Strange things happened all at once. I fell into extreme confusion. The police questioned me about my connection to the woman named Mary. I replied, "She is my girlfriend." Police said she is missing and is the prime suspect for the murder. The first victim is David, who she claims is her uncle, who is actually her lover. Currently, the police have only found Mr. David's head and hands hidden in the room behind the store. They are still looking for other parts of the body. The next victim was Miss Joan. The police found her body in the same room, wrapped neatly in a very large bag with her limbs severed. Police suspect that the chainsaw in the room was the tool she used to perform the dismemberment process. I was shocked to hear the information from the police. I remembered all of Mary's strange expressions over the past time. Her carefree appearance that night. Maybe she just did something bad to Mr. David. What I saw in the toilet was most likely his flesh. Miss Jones is also likely to be murdered when she learns the horrifying truth about Mr. David. Police are still actively searching for Mary. I feel scared and disgusted that I have loved the devil all this time. The evil behind beauty. Adela is a girl with an open-minded lifestyle who loves hanging out with friends at bars. Even though she's just 25, she's got a comfy place right in the middle of the city and drives a fancy car. Adela's not planning to get married, and she isn't in any serious relationships either. Everything's kinda up in the air. One night, Adela was driving home solo after staying out at a bar until 3 a.m. Here, she meets this totally awesome guy named Marcus. They drank, talked, and danced together. Adela felt Marcus really liked her. She jokingly thought that she was about to add another guy to her collection of unclear relationships. Adela was still feeling buzzed from the drinks and music, happily humming as she drove. Suddenly, a red car started tailing Adela's car. At first, she didn't think much of it until the car kept flashing its lights and honking. Adela felt really uneasy, thinking it was some drunk or creep following her. She stepped on it, but the red car kept right on her tail. The guy behind the wheel got bolder, speeding up and rear-ending Adela's car over and over. Realizing it wasn't a joke anymore, Adela swerved right onto a shortcut and managed to lose the red car. At home, Adela was still freaking out, thanking God she made it out safe. Adela went to bed but woke up soon after because she heard noises in the house. Adela looked around and found out the basement window was open. She shut it fast and went back to her room. Once she was sure everything was okay, Adela went back to sleep. The next morning, Adela went back down to the basement. After checking things out, she looked really mad and freaked out. When she returned to the living room and sat down to eat breakfast, Adela tuned into the news. Police have located one of the citizens reported missing in recent days. The victim was a 31-year-old man with multiple incisions and cuts near sensitive areas. Although his physical condition remains stable, the man is exhibiting signs of severe psychological trauma. In the early afternoon, Adela grabbed coffee with her bestie Erica. Adela told Erica about running into a weird car last night. Erica told Adela to watch out because there have been a bunch of people disappearing lately. The victims were young folks who got into accidents while walking alone at night. Adela brushed off Erica's warning and switched gears, asking about her best friend's love life instead. Erica was all hyped talking about this guy she's been seeing lately. That night, Adela still went out late despite Erica's warnings. She learned from what had happened and got home a bit earlier than the night before. Around midnight, Adela was driving home and spotted that red car again. This time, the red car went ahead, so Adela snapped a photo of the license plate with her phone. When she got home, the first thing she did was check the security around the house and down in the basement. After making sure everything was safe, Adela went back to her room and started digging up info on the owner of that red car using the license plate number she got. Buff, 29 years old, runs his own car garage. This guy is even cooler than Marcus, the dude Adela met last night. Adela noticed something familiar about Buff that piqued her interest even more. The next day, Adela found Buff's garage, but instead of going in, she just hung outside and watched for a while before taking off. That night, when Buff left the garage, Adela followed him all the way home in her car. When Buff saw the strange girl, he looked surprised and asked. Adela boldly walked up and accused Buff of being a creep who had been following her. Adela even asserted that Buff was behind the recent disappearances and warned him she'd call the cops on him. Buff quickly explained himself. "I saw some dude chilling behind your car. I followed and kept flashing my lights just to give you a heads up, because I've been hearing about those disappearances lately too. But you've got some serious driving skills. I lost sight of you and had to just head home." Buff asked about the man in the back of Adela's car, but she said there wasn't anybody there. After sorting things out, Adela asked if she could come over to Buff's place to have tea. Buff was taken aback by Adela's boldness, but didn't hesitate to turn down a pretty girl. Buff went inside, and Adela came up and dropped some flirting lines. Buff quickly backed off from Adela, kept his distance, and said he already had a girlfriend. Seeing Adela look disappointed, Buff quickly diffused the situation by offering her a glass of orange juice before taking off. Right as Buff turned around to hand Adela the glass of water, she reached out and jabbed a small needle into Buff's neck. He freaked out and pushed Adela away, but the drug had already kicked in, and Buff passed out a few minutes later. When Buff woke up later, he found himself in a dark room that reeked of fish and bleach. Buff's legs and arms were all tied up tight. Right next to Buff is this dude with a skinny body, all beat up on his face with infections. It's Marcus. Buff freaked out, screamed loud, and started flailing around, accidentally elbowing someone hard. Buff glanced back and saw it was a girl. Even more surprising was that the girl was Erica, who had just agreed to be his girlfriend yesterday. Buff freaked out and yelled Erica's name, but she wasn't moving at all. It's unclear if Erica's still alive or not. There were a few more folks in the room moaning and barely hanging on. Footsteps got louder, and in walked Adela with a stun gun. Turns out, she was the one behind everything. She hits up bars to find people, brings them back to the basement, and messes them up just for her own kicks. Behind that pretty and delicate appearance lurks a messed up and creepy soul. Buff screamed his lungs out into the night, but nobody around knows the messed up stuff going on inside that fancy, decked out house.
My name is Leo. My current job is manning the Oasis Fuel gas station, sandwiched between Highway 69 and a seemingly endless wall of pine forest in East Texas. By day, this place is just a dull stopover, with the roar of trucks and asphalt melting heat. But when night falls, it transforms into an isolated island of light in an ocean of darkness, and the silence is no longer peaceful, but a void waiting to be filled by fear. I'm not easily spooked, but working the night shift here week after week is enough to wear down anyone's nerves. The loneliness gnaws at you. You start hearing strange noises in the hum of the refrigerator, seeing movements in the corner of your eye that aren't there when you look directly. Most of the time, I tell myself it's just my tired mind playing tricks on me. Until that night. The air was thick, heavy, almost windless. Around almost 3 a.m, I was standing outside the door, trying in vain to get some fresh air, my eyes gazing absently towards the dark edge of the forest. I squinted, trying to pierce the haze, and then I saw a figure standing motionless at the edge of the woods. I thought maybe it was a driver whose car broke down somewhere on the road, heading to the gas station for help. But why were they standing at the edge of the forest, not by the road? I kept looking, and suddenly saw the figure raise its hand, as if waving me over. I waved back after a second's thought. Then, the figure seemed to recede back into the darkness of the forest. "Hey!" I called out, trying to keep my voice from trembling. "Is everything okay? Do you need help?" No answer. Only the other arm continuing that eerie beckoning gesture. I hesitated, took a deep breath, turned on my phone's flashlight, and cautiously walked towards the edge of the woods. The figure seemed unreal, blurry like an apparition about to dissolve. When I was only a few steps away, close enough to realize there were no clear details to the figure, just a denser black shape amidst the darkness, it abruptly stopped the beckoning gesture. Then, without a sound, it vanished into the night as if it had never existed. I stood frozen, mouth agape. What the hell? A prank? A hallucination? Or something else? The way it disappeared was too fast. An inexplicable urge, an unspoken question echoed in my head. What was it? What did it want? I knew this was a bad idea, extremely bad, but I did it anyway. I held the flashlight high, the weak beam cutting a trembling path into the thick darkness of the forest, and stepped inside. The air inside the forest was completely different, cooler, damper, and heavy with the scent of decaying leaves, damp earth, and an unpleasant, pungent odor I couldn't identify. The flashlight beam only illuminated a small circle in front of me. The silence here was even more terrifying than outside. Oppressive, heavy, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. I slowed down, straining every sense. The pounding of my heart in my chest drowned out my own footsteps. "Hello?" I called softly, my voice almost a whisper. "Is anyone here?" Only the faint echo of my own voice answered. I continued a little deeper, the flashlight beam sweeping across moss-covered tree trunks, dense fern bushes. I felt like someone was watching me from all sides, from the darkness between the trees, from above. Then I heard whispering. It was very faint, mixed with the rare light breeze rustling the leaves. It sounded like many voices whispering at once, a ghostly chorus echoing from afar. I stopped, trying to pinpoint the source of the sound. It seemed to come from all directions, surrounding me. "Someone?" I repeated, my voice now trembling noticeably. "This isn't funny." I swept the flashlight beam wildly around, but only saw trees and darkness. Fear began to tighten its grip on my throat. I had to get out of here immediately. I turned, trying to remember the direction I had come from. But in the darkness and panic, everything looked the same. The whispering still followed me, sometimes like weak pleas, sometimes like wicked giggles. And then, as my flashlight beam swept across a gap between two large trees, I saw it. A face. It was disgustingly pale, as if carved from plaster or white bone. No hair, no ears, no distinct nose. But the eyes, oh God, they were black pits, deep, completely empty. I couldn't scream. My throat felt constricted. My feet felt frozen to the ground. All I could do was stand there, facing that terrible empty gaze, while the surrounding whispers became urgent, frantic. A tiny click from the dying flashlight in my hand snapped me back to reality. Survival instinct kicked in hard. I no longer cared about direction, just bolted towards where I vaguely sensed a faint glimmer of light. Branches whipped my face, roots tripped my feet, causing me to stumble repeatedly. The whispering still pursued me closely. Finally, the neon lights of Oasis Fuel appeared before me like a rescuing beacon. I burst out of the forest, ran across the lot, reached the gas station door. My hands shook so badly, I could barely get the key in the lock. I threw myself inside, slammed the door, locked it. I leaned against the door, gasping for breath, my whole body trembling. I looked through the glass door, towards the edge of the woods, only the silent night and the still rows of trees. But I knew it wasn't a hallucination. The remaining hours of my shift turned into a living hell. I sat frozen behind the counter, not daring to take my eyes off the windows and the camera monitor. Every noise, no matter how small, made my heart leap. I needed to do something to distract myself, to prove I wasn't going crazy. I tidied up a bit, wiped down the counter and inside the drawer. When I opened the drawer, underneath some old receipts and dried up pens was a worn old leather-bound logbook. I flipped through the scrawled handwritten pages, noting minor incidents: broken gas pump, customer complaints, power outage, all the usual things from any shift. But then, near the end of the book, I stopped at a page written in different handwriting, shaky and hurried. The date was almost a year ago. The writer's name was Daniel. Most of his log entries were as normal as the others, but the last entry, just a few short lines, scrawled and almost illegible. Saw it again tonight. Standing at the edge of the woods, waving, "Don't go in there. It doesn't want to help. It wants..." The writing ended abruptly there, as if the writer was interrupted or too terrified to continue. In the bottom corner of the page, a small drawing, a round, pale face and two large, deep black dots for eyes. That was it. The face I saw in the woods. A new wave of cold horror washed over me. I wasn't the first. Daniel had seen it, and maybe he didn't get out. What happened to Daniel? I shot up, staring out the window. Maybe Daniel, or some other previous victim, their spirit trapped, forced to repeat that beckoning act night after night. to lure new prey for that pale face. As the first faint light of dawn appeared, I hastily ended my shift, ran to my car, and drove off as fast as I could. I said nothing to the person taking over the shift, just hoped he wouldn't be as curious as I was. I drove straight back to my apartment in the nearby town, heart still racing. I had left the gas station, left the forest, but I knew I hadn't really escaped it. The image of that pale face with the bottomless black eyes haunted me. Oasis Fuel was a hunting ground, and like Daniel before me, I had seen the true face of that predator. Will I one night become the next shadow standing at the edge of the woods, waving another lonely soul into the darkness? I don't know. And that not knowing, along with the image of those bottomless black eyes, is the real horror that will follow me for the rest of my life.
I'm Sean, 36, and I live alone in Texas. My wife and son left about a year ago. I haven't seen my little boy since then. He's 6 years old now. I work as a short-term security guard. Specifically, I'm hired to guard things like concerts, conferences, events, and exhibitions, which often need a lot of security guards to keep everything safe. Or when a company's regular security guard is on leave. When a company needs to quickly boost its workforce, they'll bring in temporary employees like me. This job is pretty good for me right now because of my health issues. A year ago, I had a car accident on my way home from work. After that awful accident, I'd get bad headaches whenever the weather changed. One day, the doorbell rang at 8 a.m. "Hello, I'm Brad." The man introduced himself in a cold tone and looked me up and down with a sharp gaze. "How can I help?" "I hear you work as a security guard. Can I come in and talk to you for a bit?" It turned out Brad was here for work, so I quickly invited him in. Brad sat across from me, still wearing the same expression and look in his eyes. "I need you to be a security guard at my house for one night only." "Are you organizing a party or something?" $500 in cash. I'll pay you right now." Brad didn't answer any of my questions about the security job. I could see his eyes slowly shifting from cold to red with anger. But I didn't want to agree without knowing all the details. I kept trying to ask Brad questions. $1,000. Brad slammed his hand on the table, leaned toward me, and shouted loudly. I was really worried and scared, but with the amount of money Brad was offering, I couldn't say no. I needed the money right at that time. Thinking the night would go by quickly and the job was something I was used to, I agreed with Brad. He immediately put $1,000 in cash on the table and then left. I had never taken a job with such a weird deal and attitude from the customer. That day, I couldn't shake this constant feeling of anxiety and insecurity. I wasn't exactly thrilled about making such a large sum of money. That night, right at 9 o'clock, I arrived at Brad's house. It was a decent house, but it felt a bit gloomy and cold to me. The lights in the house weren't all on. Only a dim light was visible through the window. I hesitated for a long time, but still didn't ring the doorbell. I had considered returning the money to Brad and turning down the job. "You're 20 minutes late, Sean." I was startled when Brad's cold voice cut through the silence. I'm sorry, but I don't think I can." "Come in, I don't have much time." Before I could finish, Brad interrupted me and went straight into the house. The atmosphere inside the house felt even colder than it was outside. Everything was pretty modern, but it looked like it hadn't been used in a long time. So there wasn't a party. I must have been wrong about that. There was no one else in the house except for Brad. I noticed that the wall was covered with pictures of a woman. So many. It was like an art exhibition dedicated to her. "This is my wife, Megan." I turned around, startled to see Brad standing right behind me, his eyes full of affection as he looked at pictures of his wife. His eyes were completely different from when he came to my house. Brad must really love Megan. Wait, Megan looked familiar to me. I wasn't sure, because the light was too dim to see everything clearly. I moved closer to get a better look at Megan's picture. "Here's what you need to do." Brad startled me again. I turned around and walked over to where Brad was standing. His eyes turned fierce and intimidating again. "Protect my wife's sleep." I froze, my emotions in turmoil when I heard Brad's strange request. He went upstairs and told me to follow him. The closer we got to the upper floor, the darker everything became, making it harder for me to see. I walked slowly, and the darkness was accompanied by a faint but strong enough stench that made my nerves react. I reflexively covered my nose, and Brad immediately turned to look at me. The darkness cast shadows over his scary eyes, making them stand out even more. The black shadow made the whites of his eyes stand out, highlighting the dark red veins. Without looking at me for long, Brad continued down the hallway to the room at the end. The creaking sound when Brad opened the door gave me chills. At that moment, I thought about running away, but my thoughts and actions didn't line up. Following Brad into the room, the stench was so strong it was hard to breathe. In the middle of the room was a bed with someone lying under the blanket. The room was filled with pictures of Megan, Brad's wife. This time, I was sure she looked very familiar and was trying to remember where I'd seen her before. Brad walked over to the bed, gently pulled back the covers, and revealed a badly decomposed body with bones and flesh mixed together. I couldn't say a word. I backed away and pressed myself against the wall, my heart racing. "Megan, I found the person. You can rest easier now." Brad's words made me think he was definitely crazy. I rushed to the door, shaking the doorknob with one hand and dialing the police with the other. I shouted Brad's address to the police, telling them I was being held captive by a madman. A sharp pain shot through the top of my head. I felt warm streams running down my neck and face, and a salty, fishy taste filled my mouth. I passed out immediately and had no idea what happened next. When I woke up, I was tied up in a kneeling position on the floor. In front of me was the bed with the decomposing body that Brad had propped up. I was scared out of my mind, but couldn't move or scream. Next to the body was a photo of Megan and a bouquet of roses. At that close distance, I could see her face really clearly. "This is..." Brad gritted his teeth and his eyes widened. "The one you caused the accident and then ran away from. You left her in agony and she passed away." "That's right. This face. It was that woman." "Do you have any idea how much pain I've been in for the past year? When I saw you, all I wanted to do was make you feel the pain my wife had to endure. I've lost everything." Brad screamed with hatred, pain, and helplessness. I was at a loss for words, with no way to explain that tough time. That night after the crash, I saw Megan, bleeding and quietly begging. But I was selfish. I decided to leave because I was thinking about the future and my family. In the end, my wife and son left me, and the loneliness and disease kept me stuck. Not a single day in the past year have I slept peacefully. I cried and begged Megan and Brad to forgive me. I deeply regretted what I had done. Brad couldn't calm down. He rushed at me and kept hitting my face and a wound on my head. The police broke down the door and rushed in. My vision was blurred with blood, and I saw Brad being restrained by 2 officers before I fainted again. When I woke up, I found myself in the hospital. I'd be treated for a while before facing the court.
Gavin stepped onto the bus with heavy legs. His shift had lasted longer than expected, and his body was exhausted, the smell of sweat mixed with the scent of machine oil clinging to his worn clothes. The worn heels of his shoes lightly touched the bus floor, making a creaking sound. He took a deep breath, letting the cold air seep into his chest. The bus at this late hour wasn't too crowded, just a few scattered people sitting here and there. Gavin walked straight to the last row of seats, his usual spot after each shift. He liked the quiet here, where no one bothered him, no one noticed him. Outside the window, New York City glowed brightly in the night. Tall buildings stood still, streetlights stretching across the empty streets. Gavin sighed, his mind blank. The work in the factory drained him day by day, but it was the only thing he had. Suddenly, a faint fragrance passed by, making Gavin furrow his brow. A light, sweet, and fresh perfume. A young woman boarded the bus, walking toward the row of seats in front of him. She had long, dark hair that cascaded down her shoulders. Her long coat hugged her small frame, and her high-heeled boots clicked softly on the bus floor with each step. When she sat down, her hair gently swayed. Gavin turned his face away, but his eyes couldn't help but sneak a glance at her. The woman took out her phone, her fingers swiftly scrolling across the screen. Then she laughed, a quiet laugh, but enough to grab his attention. He didn't know why he was curious. Maybe it was the silence of the late night, maybe the exhaustion that slowed his mind, or maybe it was just because he was used to observing people. He tried to keep his gaze on the bus window, but then, unable to resist, he secretly looked at the woman's phone screen. "I miss you so much. I can't wait any longer. Let's meet at our usual spot." Gavin blinked. A normal love message. He felt a little embarrassed for peeking. He was about to look away when another message appeared. "It is done. Just the cleanup left. This time, it has to be cleaned thoroughly. Leaving it too long will be troublesome." Gavin frowned, trying to make sense of the words. Maybe it was just casual talk, but then another message came up. "Everything is ready. Are you sure the place near the river will be safe?" Gavin clenched his fist. A chill ran down his spine. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't think of anything positive. He glanced at the woman again. She was still sitting there, as calm as if nothing special had happened. Her finger lightly touched the screen. Her lips curled into a small, enigmatic smile. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. "Let's meet at 11 o'clock. Bring the necessary stuff." Gavin felt as if someone had punched him in the stomach. His whole body tensed. He felt his heart pounding faster, each beat echoing in his chest. Gavin looked away, taking a deep breath to calm himself. Unconsciously, Gavin made eye contact with the man sitting in the row in front of him. He was also watching the woman, it seemed. Gavin quickly looked away again, unable to hide his confusion. His mind was spinning with a flood of thoughts. Who was she talking about? What did "handle it" mean? A hit? A murder plot? The bus continued to roll through the empty streets. Outside, the streetlights were still shining, cars still passing by. But for Gavin, everything seemed blurry. The woman suddenly turned her head. Gavin jumped, his heart nearly stopping, but she only glanced out the window behind him before lowering her head to her phone again. He swallowed hard, trying to stay calm, but his body was as taut as a bowstring. The bus was approaching the next stop. Gavin didn't know where the woman would get off, nor what he should do. Should he report it to the police? Or was he just overthinking? The The sound of the phone's messages being typed echoed, and Gavin couldn't shake the curiosity from his mind. He glanced at her phone one more time. "There's a guy who's been staring at my phone. What should I do now?" Gavin's whole body froze. A jolt of cold ran down his spine. His breath became heavy, his chest feeling as if something invisible was pressing down on him. The screen lit up again. A message from the woman's boyfriend just arrived. "Deal with him right away." Gavin felt his stomach tighten. A wave of nausea hit him, but he couldn't move. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead, his hands trembling as they gripped the edge of the seat, as if it was the only thing holding him in this nightmare. The air in the bus felt thick, everything moving slower, heavier. He wanted to turn his head, pretend he never saw anything, but his body was as stiff as a statue. At that moment, a soft sound came from the front of the bus. The man sitting in the front row stood up. He was tall, wearing a gray hoodie, hands stuffed in his pockets. He slowly walked toward Gavin, without any hurry, without any hesitation. Gavin tried to stay calm, but cold sweat had already started to bead on his forehead. He looked at the woman. She was still sitting there, but this time, her eyes were fixed on him. An amused look. She no longer giggled like before, but instead wore a vague, unreadable smile. The man came closer, then stopped, sitting down right next to Gavin. The space became suffocating. He slowly sat down. Gavin held his breath. A faint click sounded. The man took his hand out of his pocket. In his hand was a sharp object. A steel folding knife, its cold blade reflecting the dim light of the bus. He twirled the knife between his fingers, then tilted his head, looking at Gavin with a calm gaze. The woman in front was still looking at Gavin, her eyes gleaming, as if waiting for something interesting to happen. The bus kept moving through the night, but for Gavin, time seemed to stop.
I'm Dylan, 38 years old. I work as a financial analyst for a bank in San Jose. I don't have a girlfriend, nor do I have plans for married life. I'm quite introverted and a workaholic. Instead of finding myself a girlfriend and having sweet dates, I often work late at the company, sometimes even until night. One Wednesday evening, I remember leaving the office at 11 p.m. That day I didn't drive to work. I stood in front of the company to catch a taxi. It's strange because this area usually has many taxis, but today I've been waiting for 20 minutes and still haven't seen any passing by. After a stressful day at work, I'm tired and starting to lose patience. It's almost 11:30 p.m. and a taxi suddenly arrives. I can't wait any longer and jump onto the road to flag down the vehicle. The taxi driver looks at me with panic, probably because of my somewhat crazy actions. The driver looks at me and then looks over to the passenger seat, appearing very panicked and worried. I glance over to the passenger seat, and it turns out this taxi already has a passenger. It's a girl. She's leaning her head against the window, seeming either drunk or quite tired. The taxi driver lowers the window, wearing a black face mask. He looks at me with concern. "Sorry, sir, I already have a passenger," he says. I'm too tired to wait for another taxi. I suggest that the driver lets me ride along, and he can drop off the girl first to maintain the order of the taxi call. He looks worriedly at the girl for a long time before turning to me. When I offer to pay double the fare, he reluctantly agrees. Getting into the car, I smell a strong smell of alcohol, so the girl must be drunk. The driver asks for my home address. He says that my house is closer than the girl's, so he'll drop me off first. I thank him. Out of appreciation, I engage in conversation and ask for her name, but he doesn't answer. I assume he's tired, so I keep quiet. I'm a bit curious, so I observe the girl. She looks quite young, probably in her early 20s. Her skin is pale, and her long hair covers most of her face. Despite the hot weather, she's wearing a high-neck sweater. The car suddenly brakes hard, and everything lurches forward. The driver says there was a cat crossing the road. I hear the girl's head bump against the car quite hard, but she doesn't react, still deeply asleep. I want to help her sit up straight, but the driver immediately refuses. He uses one hand to awkwardly adjust her sitting position. After a while, I suddenly smell a strong odor. I'm not sure, the smell of alcohol is still very strong. I look out realizing we're almost home, so I proactively pay the taxi fare. When I say I want to pay through the ride-hailing app, the driver immediately refuses, saying I should pay in cash. I don't have enough cash, so I hope he'll pass by the nearest ATM. The driver suddenly shows annoyance, urging me to hurry up. I withdraw money as quickly as possible. When I return to the car, I accidentally catch a glimpse of the girl's pale face sitting in the passenger seat. I freeze for a few seconds, wanting to observe her more closely. Surprisingly, I catch the cold gaze of the driver. I quickly get into the car and pay the taxi fare. The amount I give him is quite large, and I request change, but he refuses, saying he doesn't have any cash here. The more the driver gives me a sense of unease. Finally, I arrive home. It's almost 1 a.m. As I get out of the car before I can close the door, the taxi speeds away. Entering the house, images of that girl and the driver keep appearing in my mind. After showering, I go upstairs and fall asleep immediately. The next day is a day off, and I wake up quite late. I watch the news on TV, and they report a carjacking incident involving a taxi company. The driver of that taxi was repeatedly beaten on the head and died early this morning at the hospital. Along with that serious carjacking is the disappearance of a young girl named Alida. Putting everything together, I suddenly remember the taxi driver and the girl from last night. I will call the police to report everything I witnessed, but my phone has disappeared. I sit for a moment, trying to remember where I left it. On the taxi, I probably dropped it when I got out of the car. I call the police on the landline, recounting everything I witnessed. Using the GPS on my phone, the police quickly locate the stolen taxi. It's on an empty lot 40 kilometers away from the city. The car is running out of gas and both doors are wide open. Inside the car, on the passenger seat, the police discover blood soaked into the seat cushion and dried. About a week later, the police find the body of the missing girl under a tree, 10 kilometers from the location of the taxi. The girl's body has a long slash across her neck, which is the direct cause of her death. Through investigation, the police conclude that the girl found under the tree is the same girl in the taxi that I met that night. The driver's name was actually her terrible boyfriend impersonating. His name is Gary. After getting drunk, Gary brutally murdered his own girlfriend and tried to destroy the body. All evidence pointed to Gary being guilty, but the next challenge for the police was to find him. There were no clues left behind, and that murderer seemed to have vanished from this world. I am still shivered thinking about that night. I sat with the body of a girl with a brutal murderer for 30 minutes in the car.